Hi everybody, welcome back. We are going to talk about section 5.5 today, and we're going to talk about completing the square. This is going to give you another method to solve quadratic equations. So first of all, what is completing the square? Completing the square is a process to solve quadratic equations by creating perfect square trinomials. Remember, we talked about those in 5.2, where it will break down into x minus or plus whatever you're working with. I'm just going to say x minus 2 squared. If that were expanded out, that would be our perfect square trinomial. So it's going to give us the same term multiplied by itself when you factor that binomial. So this whole thing is based on the box method that we talked about earlier for multiplying, but instead it's going in reverse. So if I give you x plus b times x, what you're going to do is, if you've got a perfect square trinomial, these two diagonals are going to be exactly the same. They're going to be b over 2. So normally I give you what these are here, but now we're trying to figure out what b over 2. Well, the key to this is our c value, that is just going to be some number, is going to be b over 2 squared. Because if you go to our box method, b over 2 times b over 2, based off what we were given, is going to give us b over 2 squared. So there's the key right there to solving that perfect square trinomial, is you need to figure out what b is, divide it by 2, and then square it. This will work with any type of polynomial. Some people don't like it as much, but I'm good with. I think it's very, very handy, and so I'll give you some examples here of what these are going to look like. The first one, we want to find the value of c that makes x squared minus 7x plus c a perfect square trinomial. Then write the expression as the square of a binomial. Again, our b, in this case, the number in front of x is going to be -7. So the same ABC lettering that we used in section 1 is going to apply here as well. So b is -7. So I told you that c is going to be b divided by 2 squared, which means that since b is -7, I'm going to take -7 divided by 2 and square it. And if you square it, put it in parentheses so you get that negative in there. It changes your answer if you do not have it in there. And because we are working with a fraction, we can square the numerator, the top number, separately from the denominator, the bottom number. So I can take -7 squared to get 49, and 2 squared is 4. And there is going to be the c value that will make it a perfect square trinomial. So what we have is if I plug this in, I'm going to change colors to separate that we're doing two different things here. I have x squared minus 7x plus 49 over 4. Now, if we look back at our box here, we have x and b over 2 on both sides. So that means that this number here that I'm talking about, the perfect square the binomial, is going to be b over 2. So if I am going to break this down, this is going to break down into x, and how you determine your sign is always right there, minus 7 over 2 squared. When you're working these, you're factoring these. The reason we like these is they will always follow the form x minus b, x plus or minus b over 2 squared. How you determine that, again, look at the sign on b. That is the sign that will be in your in your binomial that you are working with. The reason we make these is that we know how these are going to factor down, so then we can go ahead and use our square root method to solve these, and we've had practice with those. So if we're going to solve by completing the square, this is going to be a little different. So far with our square root methods, we want to get everything so that the right side of this equation is 0. So now we're going to go the other way. We just want x squared and x terms on one side, so we're going to get rid of that 3. We're going to add it over to both sides. So I have x squared plus 10x, and I'm going to leave a space because I know I'm going to add on something, whatever that c value is, and that is going to be equal to 3. Now, we need to find that c value right back where we were. So, b is equal to 10. So, b over 2 is equal to 5. And if I square that, I'm going to add 25 here, and that will give me a perfect square. And one thing, since you added 25 to the left side here, you need to add 25 to the right. This will factor down into x. Check my sign in front of my 10. That's a positive. I put a plus, and take b over 2, which is going to be 5. 10 divided by 2 is going to be 5. Squared is going to be equal to 3 plus 25 is going to give me 28. So all I did get from here to here, this was just factor. Again, if you want to look at this and ask yourself, I need factors of 25 that add to 10, you're going to get 5. X plus 5 times x plus 5. That's fine. So you end up here, x plus 5 times x plus 5. And then write it as squared. I'm perfectly fine with that. Do what you need to do to factor. Otherwise, it's always going to be half of the b value when you're working with perfect square trinomials. And now, to solve this, we're right back where we were with our square roots. We're going to take the square root here, square root here. On the left, I'm going to get x plus 5 is equal to, and since I put in the square root, I have to have plus or minus the square root of 28. And yes, we will break that down here in a second. But actually, let's do that right now. 28. Biggest perfect square that goes into it is 4. So I'm going to get the square root of 4 times the square root of 7. 7 doesn't have any perfect squares in it. So I'm here at x plus 5 is equal to plus or minus 2 square root 7. Since the square root of 4 is 2, subtract 5 from both sides. I get that x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus 2 square root 7. And there's our answer. Last one I've got for you. 3x squared minus 6x plus 12 is equal to 0. We're going to solve this by completing the square. The difference between this problem and the last problem is that our a value is not 1. Now our a value is 3. And this will work in any case where you have an a value that is not 1. All we're going to do is we're going to divide everything by 3. Now, sometimes that may end up with some fractions, but that's okay. We had a fraction in our first example, so we know how to work with those. Everything will be okay. 3x squared divided by 3 leaves me with x squared. 6x divided by 3 is going to leave me with 2x. 12 divided by 3 is going to leave me with 4. And 0 divided by 3 is still 0. Again, we want to subtract 4 from both sides. Get that x squared minus 2x is equal to negative 4. And I didn't leave myself enough room. So make sure you do that. Plus, I'm going to leave whatever that spot is. And that is going to equal negative 4 plus whatever I put in for my c value. My b value is going to be negative 2. So I'm going to take negative 2 over 2 and square it, which is going to equal negative 1 squared, which is just 1. So I'm going to add 1 here and 1 here. Again, if you were to factor this, I need factors of 1 that add up to negative 2. I know that I have a plus sign here, so I look forward. I'm going to get x minus 1 times x minus 1, which is going to give me x minus 1 squared, and that has to be equal to negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. Now we're right back into our square root stage. Square root, plus or minus. We have x minus 1 is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 3. Now, since I have the square root of negative 3, that means I have the square root of 1, negative 1, times the square root of 3, which means I'm going to have I times the square root of 3. I add 1 to both sides. So x is going to be 1 plus or minus I times the square root of 3. And there's my final answer. We'll get some practice with this in class. Let me know if you have questions, and hope you guys have a good day.